Hello friends, welcome back to the bench. Yesterday we did a visual inspection on this 2007 Legacy and I got some more information from the customer. So we concluded that perhaps someone was measuring around here. That's why so much damage to the pins. But we see some molten solder over here especially. Let me get something to point. Over here, right, this is melted solder, and here, right, here is almost a short. And now the reason for that is the customer did the test with tapping on the ECM when it's connected in the car, and weird stuff happens. Things stop working and that kind of stuff. So that confirms that there is indeed some cold solder somewhere. Now the question is it actually on the harness? So that's what was done over here. So that was the attempt at resoldering the pins. Now the reason it didn't work is, well, there's actually plenty of reasons. Number one, the conformal coating has not been removed. That's the first step that you need to take. Then the flux was not being used, so that makes it very difficult. Third, the temperature and the size of the tip was not big enough, so that's why it didn't work. The third reason why it didn't work. So what we're gonna do is just resolder those pins. Meanwhile, I'll also dump the EEPROM and ship it back to the customer. If it didn't help, then the customer is going to send me the replacement ECM, and I'll just program it with whatever's on this ECM, right? So first step is to use isopropyl alcohol 99%. Put the light on it, then the brush, thick brush, and just get rid of as much of the coating as we can from the pins. Then what we're gonna do is use the desoldering gun to remove some of the solder. It doesn't have to be too clean. We want to remove the majority of the solder from the pins, and then replace it with leaded solder. So this is pretty much the same procedure we do on IC608. And just like on IC608, the cold solders or the soldering issues are not visible. That's the main issue with soldering issues sometimes, right? Not all of them are going to be visible. In case of when you have the airbag symbol on the dash and airbag is not functioning, that is the issue in the overhead LED indicator, but the cracked solder over there is very much visible. There's literal very prominent cracks in the solder, but sometimes it is not visible. And in this case, I went through all of these, well, after the customer tried resoldering it, but still, I couldn't see any suspicious joints. So, for that reason, we're suspecting that it's the internals of the lead-free solder that are responsible for this. So we want to remove old solder and replace it with new solder. But of course using better solder and using flux. So just, actually this would have been more successful if the customer used, well, first of all, if the customer cleaned the conformal coating, because that's always going to be in your way. The solder is going to start mixing with coating and it's going to make a mess. But other than that, if the customer used new leaded solder and just mix it with this existing solder, there is flux inside. There is a flux core in the solder. So if you put the soldering iron tip, heat it up nicely, and put a little bit of solder on, it will give you good results. It might give you very good results. So that would produce a lot better results than we have over here. But we're going to produce even better results by removing old solder and replacing it with new solder. The other reason for this is that all of these devices need to have lead-free solder, because that's the requirement. And lead-free solder has slightly different properties than leaded, but it's heavy metal, right? So, you know, if you're asking, like, why doesn't manufacturer use leaded solder? Well, they can, but then the device needs to be appropriately more expensive for introducing heavy metals into the environment, right? So they prefer to use lead-free solder, which is good, but it produces such results. The lead-free solder is a lot more brittle, so it's very prone to cracking, and sometimes it's not visible. In this case, it is completely not visible. All right. And now, let's try it out. It'll still be a little sticky, but the majority of the conformal coating will be removed. Okay, so now it looks like this. It's not perfect, right? There's still some conformal coating left here and there, but just trace amounts. So this is good enough. So we're gonna set the desoldering station to 380 degrees. Probably the header is not going to be needed for this because, as I said, we're not removing the harness. So when you need to replace the harness, you need to remove the entire solder. In which case, you need to heat it up very nicely, and the best actually procedure is to is to put the board on the preheater, heat it up to about 50 degrees to keep it nice and hot, and then work with the desoldering gun and hot air at the same time. So you produce good results like these. No ripped pads or no deformation on the board, right? But that's when you have to remove the harness. In this case, we just want to remove some solder from each pin and then replace it with new solder. That should resolve the problem. On top of that, since we have IC608 over here, I suspect that this might also cause some issues. So just to be sure, we're going to resolder the IC608. Now for this, I'm not using flux, and the main reason for that is to not clog the desoldering gun. I never use flux when desoldering, just as just to save my device, because it's horrible to clean when you have the mixture of solder and flux in there. All right, let's speed up the footage and get it done. Alrighty, soldering is actually perfect. That was first try. No corrections needed. Check here. Alright. Even amount of solder on each pin. Only have a little cotton here, no big deal. There, and there's one more here, no biggie. But perfect. Well, okay, this pin, this is actually no connect, this one. But this one has slightly more solder. But other than that, pins are shiny, chip is aligned, and the same amount of solder roughly on each pin. A very nice job, very nice. Sometimes it takes me few times to get this result, and this one just wanted to sit properly. So that's fine. And we have all the pins on the back resoldered, every single one. It looks good. Looks good to me. So now, if this still produces the same effect, right? If you tap on it and something changes, something doesn't work, the only solution is to clone it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to rip the EEPROM from this and send the ECM back to the customer, and we'll see. But if this cold solders was the only issue here, I don't expect that they're gonna be here anymore, because this is pretty much the best you can do, removing the old solder from the pins. Because as I said, you could just try resoldering it, and that probably would help at least for a while. But with removing the old solder and putting new solder on, that should help permanently. So the car is gonna die before there's anything wrong with the soldering on this one. Alrighty guys, that'll do. Happy Sunday. Hope you're staying busy. Being busy on Sunday is not a bad thing. I know I come from the country where they take it seriously. All the stores are closed on Sunday, and it's enforced by the government that you can only work if you're in the essential business, like gas station, hospital, and stuff like that. But no other businesses, non-essential businesses, cannot operate on Sunday. It sucks. It definitely sucks. But what are you gonna do? It's a Catholic country. Alrighty. Thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate you. Hope you found this entertaining. If you're curious, it took 1 hour and 15 minutes to get all this done. I'm sure it doesn't feel like that in a short version. And I shall see you guys in the next one.